Hey guys, this is Gregg Rosenthal for NFL Daily. You'll notice no intro. What's going on? It's because we already taped the intro. We taped the whole show. We taped 3 different parts of the show. I got Jourdan Rodrigue coming up. I got Nick Shook coming up. I got Stacey Dales talking about the Bears. But I am growing increasingly insane, wanting to get every bit of news possible into this show. And we had breaking news on CeeDee Lamb not reporting for Dallas Cowboys training camp. He did not get on the Cowboys plane on Tuesday over to the West Coast in Oxnard. He is not showing up, and I want to make sure that was in the show. Cowboys can't be surprised letting it get this close. They've been here before, by the way. Zach Martin held out a couple of years ago. Ezekiel Elliott had a really long holdout, you'll remember, in 2019 that didn't end until the season almost started. It doesn't seem like this CeeDee Lamb contract is particularly close at this point, but he will not be there. It is not devastating for the Cowboys to be missing a wide receiver during training camp. It is not the same as if Matthew Stafford had missed training camp for the Rams. We'll get to that later in the show, but it is still a reminder of how much work this Cowboys team has to do in the next couple of weeks between Lamb, maybe Dak. Micah Parsons is going to need a contract extension at some point, and CeeDee Lamb should not accept anything less than Justin Jefferson money. Whether it's more, whether it's a little bit less, he's going to be in that ballpark. So Cowboys camp starting off on an annoying note, but they love the attention, even if it's negative attention. And the Cowboys, seems like they've had plenty of that this offseason. A lot to get to on today's show. And now I'm going to send it over to myself and start off this show with Nick Shook to get to all the news. All the teams are back on the practice field. It really feels like the NFL season started on Tuesday, and excited to have you aboard. Welcome to NFL Daily, where we would not look better blonde. I'm Gregg Rosenthal, and beyond lucky today to be joined by my friend Nick Shook of NFL.com, NFL Network, and he misses the days when he had hair to potentially color.
Yeah, fun fact, Greg, when I was like 6 years old, I have a picture from my dad's wedding to my former stepmom. I had flowing locks, blonde hair. It was nicely coiffed for the wedding. I was in a tux, but at one point it went down to my shoulders. So I'm bald now, but it was in the past. It was there.
I don't know if you could pull off the platinum look that Joe Burrow did on the way into training camp, but you got to love a young man who can like make national news just by changing his hair color. I just feel different today, Nick. 23 teams showed up to work on Tuesday for training camp. It really feels like it's all happening. It started. There's a lot of news that happened today, and so we are going to get to all of it. We're also going to talk about the Matthew Stafford contract adjustment and whether there might be a little bit more to the story there with one of our great contributors, Jourdan Rodrigue of The Athletic. Also going to do a deep dive on the Bears, who have been in camp now for more than a week, or almost a week there in Chicago. And we'll do that at the end of the show. But before we do that, Nick, let's roll through the news. Hit it, Randy.
News.
Okay, outside of that, like 1 hour where it looked like Matthew Stafford might be holding out. Nick, I think the most interesting news today were the players that showed up. Let's start with Brandon Aiyuk and Tua Tagovailoa off the bat. Brandon Aiyuk, we've talked about how he requested a trade, but he is there in training camp. We don't know yet if it's going to be a hold in, but it's definitely not a hold out. John Lynch, the GM, was asked at a press conference on Tuesday whether he could guarantee that Aiyuk stays on this roster.
I think, again, no absolutes there. We fully intend on Brandon being a Niner moving forward. We're always open to listen to things. But like I said, we expect Brandon to be an integral part of our team like he has been, and excited about that.
Yeah, it's interesting that he won't say that he won't trade him. Leaving that door open. I mean, that is, to me, is very purposeful. I don't think he expects to trade him. I think they want to have him there, but I think they don't know how this is going to go, and they're leaving the door just a little bit open in case someone wants to come with a real deal offer that I doubt has happened so far.
Yeah, I think both sides are kind of feeling each other out. Neither is really handling this the most graciously. The fact that Aiyuk showed up, I was a little bit surprised. And the one thing you do is you never speak in absolutes. That's how you couch everything. I'm not going to go in absolutes. He will be on the team, because you get the Godfather offer and you're like, all right, we're going to move on. Like, if there's something that you can't turn down, then you obviously take that offer. But I just don't think that exists right now. And we don't live in a world like, you had talked about with Ian last week, where, there's a 1-for-1 deal, like, him for Devontae Adams, who says no. That doesn't really exist. So it's going to be complicated to move him. I do expect him to eventually be on that roster, but I don't think they really understand exactly where they are in negotiations right now.
Yeah, there'll be more on this on Wednesday. We'll see if he practices. I doubt it, but I also said on Monday's show that I expected Jordan Love would practice and was immediately wrong. So it's dangerous to make guesses on news that can change. Tua Tagovailoa showed up. Not a surprise to me. Tyreek Hill was also there, and that one's been on my radar that he wants a new contract. He talked about the one thing he wanted to get across to his agent, Drew Rosenhaus, on Tuesday.
To be honest, I had no idea. Obviously, I let Drew and the team handle that situation. And the only thing I told Drew was like, do not get me traded, bro. Last time you did this, you got me traded. So that's been my only thing to him. I'm like, if I want to stay here in Miami, man.
Yeah, I would want to stay in Miami if I was him too, with Mike McDaniel and that city. It's tricky though. You kind of can't pay Tyreek Hill until you pay Tua Tagovailoa, and it wasn't at our network, but I've just seen some cautious reporting about that they might not be that close, and that there might be a belief, if I'm reading between the lines from the Dolphins, that look like, unlike these other quarterbacks, there might not be a $60 million per year offer out there for Tua from other teams, so that the Dolphins actually feel they might have a little more leverage than other teams in this situation. That was Jeff Darlington that said that. I should credit him, our former coworker. Just a little different on this vibe than all the other quarterback talks.
Yeah, this one feels like the Dolphins are hesitant, and I think a lot of it is because of market value, like you said. And it's also, he led the league in passing last year, but he's also only completed one season fully healthy. And there's just a little bit less to work with. If he's your guy, you pay him. But I understand the hesitancy and how you're trying to react to a quarterback market that just continues to balloon and waiting it out. It feels like this one might actually go on pretty long, which could hold up everything else. But then again, if you look at Tyreek, how much, how are you really going to pay him? When we talked about this, on a previous show, there are only so many shiny toys in that toy room that you can pay, over time. And if you're going to give a ton of money to the quarterback, then somebody's going to have to suffer the consequences. So I think they're in a bit of a holding pattern right now. So we'll see how it plays out.
Well, and they just gave him a ton of money 2 years ago, and the CBA rules are such you can just always keep renegotiating, and that contract starts to look pretty good after a couple years, just because of how salaries go up. So it's a tricky spot with him a few years away from free agency. It doesn't sound to me, though, that he is going to raise a big stink, and maybe he'll get the Amari Cooper deal. We're going to get to him in a second, where you just get like a little bit of you get something out of the deal for being a pain. Hassan Reddick's situation is different, though. He is holding out of training camp. There just have not been many holdouts since this new CBA was signed, because you can get fined heavily, and it really increases quickly, where you're losing a lot of money. Hassan Reddick is due to make $14.5 million per year. I want to read something from Rich Cimini, who's one of the best Jets reporters out there. He works for ESPN. He wrote, at the time of the trade, the Jets were, quote, under the impression that Reddick, who turns 30 on September 22nd, was content to play out the final year of his contract and hit free agency. There may have been a miscommunication, or perhaps Reddick changed his mind. Either way, it was an odd look for both sides. I never seen this. A guy that gets traded and then is immediately upset with the team. And you hate to say same old Jets, but it just is like, this is not something they were expecting coming into the year, that this is the bit of drama that they have to deal with.
Yeah, it's a bummer too, because he's part of a defense that's ferocious, and it's the ideal piece to really, take them to the next level. But he's also 19th in APY right now. And he's in the final year of his deal, and he's 30 years old. So if he's going to cash in, it's got to be right now. So I understand the sense of urgency from him, but usually when you see these deals happen, you see extensions immediately follow. The fact that we're seeing the opposite as training camp starts, again, falls under the umbrella of Jets just not quite handling the situation the best.
It says there may have been a miscommunication. So the just reading between the lines with that reporting, The Jets thought they were good for whatever reason because he was not happy in Philadelphia. That's really why they made the move to get Bryce Huff from the Jets, who replaced Hassan Reddick. I talked to someone in Philadelphia, not with a team, just a reporter, that was like, it was a deal last year. It affected Hassan Reddick. He was not happy, and I don't know if it affected his play, but they knew he wasn't happy, and now the Jets are dealing with that same situation. Your Brownies won't have to worry about that, though. At least not with Amari Cooper, who has earned his money and then some, I would say, with the Browns. That was an excellent move by Andrew Berry, and he did show up, and they didn't even give him a raise. They just gave him $5 million in incentives. The whether that's reachable incentives or not, we don't really know at this point. The details aren't out there. And that's sometimes what you do with these veterans. You just tack like a little bit of incentives on when they don't really have much leverage, and it makes them happy enough. And Amari Cooper is in the building, and they need him in the building.
Yeah, I mean, when we talk about leverage, I think about his position. I mean, he is the most important receiver on that team by a long shot. This is another season in which they don't know what they have in Deshaun Watson. He needs that guy out there. I thought he was going to get more out of it. I thought he'd at least get another year. The fact that he just got $5 million in incentives and he got $10 million up front, I mean, that was a serious concession on Amari's part to get to camp. I mean, I was very surprised by that because he's another guy, 30 years old. That's usually the mark when it's the last time you can really cash in on a multi-year deal. So to, see that he only got half of it up front, 10 million out of that 20, everything else is the same and you can earn 5 million more. I mean, he's been super productive and I give him that. He could probably hit some of those incentives. We don't know what they are, but I was just surprised. I thought he'd get more out of it.
Yeah. If I had to guess, what happened was they just were not going to give him guaranteed money or give him a fair contract into next year. The whole idea of like, we're guaranteeing him this salary. You don't need to do that. He's making the team. It's guaranteed once you're on the team week one. You get it $10 million right now instead of spread out. Some people like that. You get the money quicker. You can invest it quicker. Who knows? Maybe he's buying a house. That's nice. But if they weren't going to give him a fair multi-year extension, he might prefer, okay, forget it. I want to get back on the market. But it's not like they promised not to tag him or anything like that. So he'll be motivated to have a big time year. I'm sure he will. I know he hasn't been the most consistent player, but when he is out there, he has been awesome. And he was almost underrated how good he was last year for Cleveland. Let's go to their division rivals. Mike Brown talked about the Jamar Chase contract, and let's listen to it because I think there's a couple directions we could go, but let's parse some Mike Brown talking before the season.
He's a key player. Next to Joe, he's our next one, and he knows that we know it. This may take a while. We are going to bend over backwards to get it done. I can't tell you when, no.
Okay, so that was the positive part if you're a Bengals fan, and that's what they latched on to. Later in that same press conference, he did indicate it's hard for him to imagine that contract happening before this season. And that was the quote that got sent out a lot by the national reporters. And then the Bengals fans are mad and they're like, oh, why are you trying to make it sound like same old Bengals when he said he's going to bend over backwards? And the truth is somewhere in the middle. That indicated to me, and Jamar Chase being happy indicated to me, like it'll be fine. But he's also saying, I'm not going to negotiate essentially with in camp or in the regular season. Like other teams do that. So if you were really bending over backwards, you could do that. And other teams make sure to lock up their receiver this season a year early instead of going into a contract year, having like a CeeDee Lamb situation. We see it with Justin Jefferson. So he's not exactly bending over backwards. And the people that are saying, okay, it's always a little more complicated with the Bengals, I think there's some truth to that too. That said, I just think they've telegraphed it's probably Chase happening, Higgins not, and hopefully for Bengals fans and for Joe Burrow, they get it done eventually.
Yeah, exactly. I think this deal gets done next year, early next year. They have the protection of his, one more year left in his contract. They don't need to be in a rush. I don't think that he gets to a contract year situation. The writing was on the wall as soon as they tagged T. Higgins and didn't sign him to an extension. He's the only player who was franchise tagged this offseason who did not sign an extension. We know what that means. Joe Burrow already got paid. Jamar Chase is next. We're just not going to do it right now, but he is an integral part of our offense and of our future. The only question I have, Greg, does he exceed $35 million a year that Justin Jefferson got? Because if he has a huge year this year, then he's going to.
Yes. Although the Bengals, Joe Burrow, they got him to take just like a little bit less than the other guys. It wasn't much if you really looked at the structure. He obviously did extremely well, but just a little bit less. So maybe he doesn't go over that. And to be fair to the Bengals, I pointed out Justin Jefferson. He got drafted a year before Chase, of course. Yep. So that same contract did not happen until the following year. And you're right. It's going to cost a little more in a year, but the Bengals sound like they're ready to do it. And yeah, I mentioned at the top, Joe Burrow with the hair. What did you think? Little Eminem, Eminem, I saw #1 on the Billboard charts. It's in 2024. How about that? And then Joe Burrow with the homage to Eminem today with the platinum hair.
As soon as I saw it, I just thought, may I have your attention, please? It's the 99 VMAs all over again. Eminem and like 50 guys, all with blonde hair. He's walking into camp.
I love that Joe Burrow. He was very outspoken at LSU. He's a different sort of dude, and he has not let go of that at all. We can only hope he is healthy this year because he makes the NFL so much better. A couple things before we get to our speed round, just quickly. The NFL PA, their director, spoke to Mark Maskey of the Washington Post, talking about 18 game and making that part of every regular season. And he said there's been very, 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 used 3 varies, high level, superficially, with a recognition about, this is something we should be talking about. So he was asked if there has been talks, and we should really kick the tires and understand what else is going to go into it. But he also pointed out, he's not ruling it out. He said the simple fact of the matter, when you have a growing enterprise and there's opportunities within that period of time, why wouldn't you want to do that? So it sounds like the players are open to it. The devil will be in the details.
Yeah, it'll be in the details. But, we know the NFL loves to make everything a tentpole event, and they love to capitalize on their, ever-continuing growth. So I think this is an inevitable result of that growth.
Oh, I thought you were saying they're going to make the CBA negotiations for 18 games like a new tentpole event. Like we'll do some programming.
We'll have a
that.
Special. We'll have a whole set of coverage for it. My only question is, if you go to 18 games, do you work in 2 buys? Because that is a grind of a season.
Yes, I think you should. I think the players will want that. And again, that's the details. And for all you out there who don't know the CBA details, and why would you? You love football. It's not up till 2031. So any 18-game season, if that happened, if they tried to agree to that, they'd have to rip up the deal. They'd have to make some adjustments. I'm sure the players would want some concessions, maybe a higher share of revenue. But it really feels like there is momentum there. They would get rid of a preseason game almost certainly. Roger Goodell has mentioned that. So that story continues to move forward. Finally, Tyson Campbell. When a guy signs a 4-year, $76 million contract, I just put him in the news. I know not a lot of people know about Tyson Campbell, but Nick Schuck does because he knows about every team.
Yeah, baby. And I was thinking, I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. And then I thought, well, actually, let's go look at his numbers. And last year he was not very good, but he was dealing with a hamstring injury for the majority of the season. And anybody who's ever had a hamstring injury knows those are nagging. They don't, heal quickly. It can hamper you, especially when speed is the name of your game. The year prior, he had a great 2022. He finished in the top 5 in targeted EPA allowed. His number was in way low, which is good when you're a defensive back. It shot in the other direction last year because he was hampered by that injury. This is a contract that you're doing before the anticipated bounce back season so that you're not paying an even higher premium next year. So good on the Jaguars for betting on a guy that they believe in. 2nd round pick, you already have the investment there. Makes a ton of sense. Now you just got to go out and produce and prove that he was worth it.
Yeah, I love it because he was a really good player a couple of years ago. I think they learned from the Josh Allen, now Josh Hines Allen situation where they waited a year on to give him his contract and they ended up paying a lot more. And the most important thing you can do as a team is identify who are your guys, the guys that you're going to be paying out 3-4 years. He got guarantees into the 3rd year of this contract, and I think they did a good job there.
That's also that's a rare instance in which hyphenation really helps everybody. Usually it just complicates matters, but with 2 prominent Josh Allens in the NFL, I appreciate the hyphenation of Hines Allen so that now when I write, I don't have to write Josh Allen, the edge rusher, Josh Allen, the quarterback. So thank you,
also,
Josh Hines Allen.
Was he always Joshua? Because he's now Joshua Hines Allen.
No, he was Josh Allen.
Okay, so now it's changed on multiple fronts, and more power to him, and good job by the Jaguars. All right, Randy, hit the music. We're going fast. Other players reporting to camp on Tuesday. Cortland Sutton of the Broncos, Alvin Kamara of the Saints.
Alvin Kamara, probably going to stay quiet on the matter. I understand his position. But it's good that he's there because this is a big year for the Saints offensively. After that offense struggled, statistically they were actually better than you realize, but visually it was a tough watch. So it's good that he's there. He's an important part of that offense. And Cortland Sutton, just stay healthy and stay on the field and try and figure it out with your newest quarterback, whoever it is with the Broncos. Let's just see if Sean Payton can make it all work.
All right, they're splitting reps to that point, the Broncos, between three quarterbacks to start camp. That never is great. It's Bo Nix, it's Jarrett Stidham, and it's our friend Zach Wilson. The Dolphins signed Emmanuel Ogbah. Mentioned a couple shows ago how Shaq Barrett retired. Ogbah gets $5 million. Was the best pass rusher available, so that makes sense. He might be starting in week 1. He probably is for them. They're so banged up. They also put Odell Beckham on the PUP list. Not a great sign there. Kadarius Toney is playing running back in practice.
Oh no, Greg. I mean, look. I understand trying to get the football in Kadarius Toney's hands. He's a great athlete and everything, but he's also not the most resilient physically. I fear the idea of Kadarius Toney running between the tackles. That's not the Chiefs' offense, but it just scares me. Maybe you get him out on the perimeter, a little orbit motion, that type of thing, and it makes sense. But they got to find use for him.
It's a chance to
some
make the
reason.
team, Shooky. It's his chance to make the team. He might not. Lamar Jackson was out for a 4th straight day with an illness. Jacoby Brissett is the starter with the Patriots, according to their coach, Jourdan Mayo. But Drake May could absolutely play his way into being the starter week 1 if he outplays Brissett in camp. Mayo said it's not about like hitting certain benchmarks or like whether May is ready. He's just like, if he outplays Brissett, he'll be week 1 starter. I don't think they want that to happen. Chase Brown, a lot of Chase Brown hype, has the opportunity to be the guy in Cincinnati, according to Duke Tobin. What do you think about that, Nick?
Yeah, that's strange. I mean, they got rid of Joe Mixon, and they were like, all right, no, we're going to go with Zach Moss. Yeah, this is it. And I looked at that backfield, and I thought, committee? Is somebody else going to pick up some of the slack? So we'll see what happens. They need somebody.
I like Chase Brown. It probably will be a committee. Zach Moss, Chase Brown. But it does show they like Chase Brown quite a bit. And finally, Antonio Pierce, the latest coach to join the Our Starters, will play in the preseason brigade.
Yeah.
It's kind of happening all over the league. At least a handful of teams are like, we're going to play starters. Jourdan Mayo was another one. I feel like it's almost a pushback to the trend that's been happening.
Yeah, we're facing a future in which we might have one less preseason game. These guys need tune-ups. These are not the days of old with two-a-days, so let's get them some reps. Why not?
And that's it. Shooky, light work for you. This is like when you go to the gym and you just don't have time. Does that ever happen to you? Or if you go, you just make it happen and you're just like, I'm going to do 30 minutes just on my thighs, or I don't know. What
no, that's when I pound out some quick cardio and then I run through shoulders real quick, and it's just in and out.
So light work for Shook today. He is going on a well-deserved couple days off coming up. So enjoy it, my friend, and we will get to you next week. And we're going to get to Jourdan Rodrigue of The Athletic right after the break to talk a little Matthew Stafford. Back on NFL Daily, it's Jourdan Rodrigue of The Athletic in a surprise appearance.
Location change.
We didn't know, Jourdan, that the Rams were going to make news today, but you were there when the news was being made, and I thought you had a great perspective on it, and so wanted to get you on. And we're actually going to start for the first time ever in the history of NFL Daily with an appearance by a previous version of our guest before the actual guest. So listen to Jourdan Rodrigue doing real reporter stuff at a press conference earlier today, talking to Sean McVay about this Matthew Stafford contract adjustment.
So it just to be clear, respectfully, there was some financial component, but also there were additional things you guys wanted to talk through. And
there's a lot of layers to these things, Jourdan, and I think you know that as well. And here's what I would say. I would prefer, and I totally respect and understand, just there's a lot of layers to it. There was a lot of conversations and dialogue, some of which, maybe was somewhat close, some of which was really far off. And so all I really cared about was what I heard from him, what was important that Jimmy communicated to our group, and then we were able to get it solved with Les, Kevin, Tony, and myself, and that I am grateful for.
Just kind of a weird press conference, weird day with the Rams.
Weird day, Greg.
Right. The actual transaction shouldn't be that weird. Like Matthew Stafford wanted more money, and we don't have all the details, but I believe your reporting at The Athletic has that there is more guaranteed money into future years of his contract, and the devil will be in the details there. That's not strange, but even your question there that Sean McVay referred to, it wasn't all about the money. What was your takeaway with that?
Yeah, so when this situation started unfolding many months ago, I guess that answer doesn't necessarily surprise me, although openly talking about how it wasn't necessarily all financially related, or admitting that it wasn't all financially related in terms of how the conversations unfolded. He made some allusions and references to previous situations, and he even talked about, previous failures that he had gone through. And I wondered for a minute if that was potentially talking about some of the lack of communication that is very much on the record about having happened between himself and Jared Goff before he traded Jared Goff. And so I think wanting to avoid that this time around, this situation dragged on. Obviously, they weren't ever talking about, that drastic of a move. But in terms of this contract adjustment, wanting to make sure that even on something that you would think is relatively simple like this, that you're communicating very clearly. And there were just, I think, some things that they needed to hammer out and clear up. I think that you have two people who are, similar in age and in, status and importance in that building in terms of what they feel they contribute and what they feel, kind of is necessary, and how to have that ecosystem work. And I also think that one of them is kind of revisiting his career in a way where he's thinking, I'm going to be a coach for a lot longer now. And another one is really thinking about, okay, how much longer am I going to do this? And my impression from the very jump of this in April, when Ian Rappaport was the first to report that Matthew Stafford was looking for more guarantees on his existing contract, which Sean McVay confirmed that reporting was accurate. He was, to me, it was a signal almost like Matthew felt so good to me. This is my opinion and kind of me reading the tea leaves, not just of Sean sort of wanting to make sure he didn't let past failures and communication lapses sneak into current and existing relationships, but also on the other side of it, Matthew Stafford maybe sending a signal out there saying, I'm going to be that dude for more years than all the rest of you, not just Rams, but the rest of the league maybe thinks I'm going to be, because of the year that he had in 2023, where he was significantly, in the top 7, top 5 of quarterback play week after week, and did elevate that roster so significantly. But I think it's important too to remember in something like this, when you're talking not just about the financials, some of it is financial. I mean, the quarterback market has inflated, and Matthew Stafford, who played the way that he played, he fell to like 11 or 12 in terms of average annual. And while that can be skewed a little bit because he did make $65 million over the course of one calendar year at one point, the guarantees just maybe weren't quite where they were. There's 15 of 27 million guaranteed in 2025, but none guaranteed in 2026. And so fixing that, correcting that probably was a part of the mission, but also clearing up some of the language around that was probably part of the mission as well, when Sean McVay was addressing communication errors and just different types of things and clearing up, like he said, that he didn't want to think that people were not accurate, but things did need to be cleared up between sort of the narrative around this entire situation. Which I found to be very cryptic.
I'm not that clear. I know.
If
it's not
I found
finances,
that to be,
what is it? Is it their relationship? I thought it was just interesting that you said it. Maybe it's a signal to the league, not just the Rams, but also the Rams, that he believes he can play at a high level for a long time. And maybe he did not want to be in this year-to-year situation. But the contract that he got, guaranteeing $15 million in 2025, that sort of slicing it down the middle, where I don't think that...
to be clear, that was the previous contract. So the point of this is that the new should, according to everything I've heard so far, we don't have the official details. That's how frenetic this came together when they realized they didn't actually know, a lot of the people in the building didn't actually know whether he was going to show up. We're recording this on Tuesday morning. They didn't know whether he was going to show up to camp or not, or whether he could potentially actually have been, committing to a holdout. And so getting this done, Sean McVay was scheduled to talk at 9:30 this morning, to the point where the social team even started playing the live stream of the lectern, and he just wasn't there. And so then obviously that's when I texted you, Gregg, and I was like, hey, we're going to get Rams news today.
Yeah, and he didn't show up for 3 more hours, and it did have a happy ending. And I guess because of the guaranteed money, it seems that he would be there in 2025, barring anything crazy.
Right.
But he has had his injury history, and that hangs over all of this as well.
It's a commitment thing too. 2026 previously not having. Now you're being a great mentor to me, Gregg, because I totally just cut you off just now.
That's great. But if it's the right time for it, don't wait.
So that 2026 previously having no guaranteed money, specifically in 2026 of a $26 million base salary. That's like a mercenary type of vibe there. Like if you think you're going to be playing, till near 40, and maybe even beyond that. And that's just, again, that's the tea leaves I'm reading from this whole thing, wanting that guaranteed money, then you're not going to be wanting to play on a mercenary type of deal. I mean, that's basically 1 year, nothing guaranteed. And then you want commitment from the team that has previously positioned you as the star, the franchise quarterback, who made a documentary about you in the offseason. I mean, it just feels like some of the things that Sean McVay was commenting on a bit openly about the non-financials had to do more so of like communicating needs and wants in a very simple and straightforward way, frankly.
Does it change, and we'll wrap on this, I do appreciate you coming on, how you think about Stafford's future with the Rams? Because that to me was... It wasn't the takeaway from today, but it was just like, oh, this is something to watch, maybe even a little more than I thought. The Dak Prescott could be out there next year. Like, who knows? Does this just put the Stafford and Rams relationship a little bit more on your radar, ironically on a day where they're committing to him financially more?
I think if he would have held out, then that would have been a significantly more dramatic story, because there are roster casualties that happen all across the ecosystem. If a quarterback who does lift the roster as much as Matthew does holds out, then you can't get your offense off the ground. And they don't have reliable backup play because Jimmy Garoppolo would be, suspended for the first 2 games of the season if the holdout potentially extended. So I would have probably been more concerned or more flagged about that. I just think that it's really interesting that Sean McVay again reiterated the importance of communication and said he thinks, and the other thing that I flagged a little bit was that he thinks that he and Matthew's relationship is better for having undertaken this situation. But again, like, I can't emphasize enough, like, all of this happened Tuesday morning over the course of 3 hours. Again, so it's like the deadline, they seem to at that point very much take the deadline seriously. And potentially avoided a fracture down the line because they're able to get in a room and talk about, again, simple wants and needs. And just wanted to, I just wanted to clarify too, adjusted contract means adjusted contract. Don't really know what it's going to look like in terms of year over year guarantees, but it does seem like some of the existing guarantees and then maybe a bump in some of those existing guarantees will be moved and reallocated over different courses of the contract.
Okay. We will look for that. And yeah, just a little surprise, little extra something on this.
Look at you getting spicy too, Gregg, throwing out another name in the mix here.
Oh, why not? I've been saying it on this podcast. Let's get a little more NBA like. We can spend half the season if like Stafford, like the team is struggling a little bit. I could see it. It's like Paul George and Clippers. Will he leave? Will he not? We need more of that, I feel like, in the NFL. And there's no bigger names than you could have than Dak and Stafford. Maybe they could flip spots. I don't think it's got to happen, but just a little fun addition to our Tuesday show. Thank you, Jourdan. Little extra Jourdan on this week. And yeah, you're off and running now. Training camp is training camping.
I'm off and sweating, actually, is more like it. So it's good. I think the more I'm awake, the bigger my hair expands. So
I love it. All right. We'll see you next time in the studio. After the break, I talked to the great Stacey Dales about the Chicago Bears. Back after this. Welcome back to NFL Daily. It's Olympics week. And so we brought on the only Olympian I know personally, Stacey Dales, former number 3 overall pick in the WNBA, Oklahoma Hall of Famer. Does it disgust you, Stacey, to work with so many people that are so much less athletic than you, like myself?
Disgust is a strong word, Greg. I don't think I would go there, but you're also aging me a little bit. So thank you for that.
Well, how did I do that?
As my dogs come in the room.
How did I age you? I did not say when you played in the Olympics. I did not say when you were the number 3 overall pick. I just pointed out that you are an athlete covering great athletes. And then you got to talk to someone like myself, supposedly on an equal level. And if I were you, I would just be thinking like, give me a break. I was big time. Come on.
Yeah, I mean, I set the standard. I mean, what else can I say? No, I think it's because of all the injuries that I've had post-career from all those years ago. But it was incredible. Olympic week is amazing. It's amazing because there's no greater galvanizing global experience uniformly that is so positive than the Olympics. And it's the best of the best. I mean, so for me, it's incredible, and it was incredible, and it's an incredible week to watch and kind of follow.
Yeah, that must have been like, of all the things you've done in your career, that has to be up there just as a cool experience. It's a really cool experience for me to just have you on this show. We're going to talk about Bears, and I will point out for anyone that's watching on YouTube that it's not just your dog Rudy now back there on the couch. You got both dogs. We got both dogs hanging out, and they're beautiful.
I got more during the pandemic, Greg. Okay, so Blue, she's 80 pounds, 80 plus, and she likes to take over the bench, and they're sisters. And Ruby is the oldest to her. I have another one who's older, but people liked my dogs more during the pandemic because of the whole home camera thing than my actual NFL reporting. So go figure.
Why not both? You know, the eye candy and then the info. And you had it. You were at Bears camp on Tuesday as we're recording this, and you've gotten to see one of the most fascinating teams in the NFL. I finally am happy, I'm sure you are too, as someone that lives nearby, that the Bears are actually as interesting as the amount of attention that they get nationally, because they always get attention. They always get primetime games. But now with Caleb Williams and a lot of optimism, what is your feel, and you've spent time with them this offseason, about how Caleb's adapting? We're about 4 days into camp for them. They have not started practicing in pads yet. And then more specifically, kind of like what they're building for him, like what kind of offense and what they want to accomplish with him in his rookie year.
Yeah, Greg. So, by the way, kudos to the Bears for sending Jonathan Owens. Well, not sending him, but you mentioned to start this thing off with the Olympics to watch his wife, Simone Biles, which is, you know, I'm Canadian and American, so I'm rooting for her.
Congrats, by the way, a new American citizen doing that.
Yes, and she's the greatest of all time. So that's just a cool storyline. But there's so many with the Bears, Greg. It's the best roster we've seen in totality in Chicago, and at a point where I can't actually remember. I mean, the last time they had a total, think about the offense alone, Greg. The last time they had a total, you know, top 5, I think it was, scoring offense and top 5 total offense was in the Jay Cutler days in, I think, 2013. And
that was a good team. That was a decent team.
It
was. Conference finals.
It was. They had a couple good receivers, a good running back, and Cuddy could throw the ball a little bit. This is different, though. There's a positivity being at practice. There's an energy. I really think this defense is the best part of the whole group. Like they are spectacular. And I say that hesitantly because the receiving core is spectacular. To watch the ball come out of Caleb's hands, I mean, he was so good today. You talk about one day, they're not in pads. He can change his platform in a moment's notice, the way he's with his arm angles. And that coupled with his eyes and his ability to see the field in the amount of time a quarterback snaps the football. It's unbelievable what they're able to do. That's why your offensive line has to be really the stalwart of what you do, right, Greg? But you're talking 3 seconds, maybe 4 if you're lucky, to really figure out and navigate where your reads are. 1, 2, 3, boom, 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 and then find the right one. He'll take the check down. He'll hit the long down, as I would say. I mean, he's going to do it all.
Yeah, to me, his tape was so fascinating to watch because I think he was more mature than people gave him credit for all the big playmaking that he tried to do in this last season, keeping up with a bad defense and overcoming a bad offensive line, maybe really not great skill position players either. He barely put the ball in harm's way. Like there were not many interceptions. There were not many near interceptions. He made good decisions. It actually makes me think, and I don't know how much RPO stuff they're doing here at camp. They did a lot of RPOs in college. He's so good throwing to the left. I can't remember a prospect or almost any quarterback, a right-hander, being able to throw to the left. And you're right, he has that great feel that he almost reminds me a little bit of a tennis player. Sometimes tennis players, like a Roger Federer is a good example. Ons Jabeur would be another one. When they have so many tricks in their bag, when they have so many different things they can do, it can actually take them a little while to figure out what they should focus on and when to use what trick or what club in the bag. And I do wonder with him, do you get a feel from him or the Bears? Like what are the focuses for this rookie season?
Yeah, I think you're going to see a lot of motion, and that's going to be part of his development. The number one thing they tried to figure out this offseason with him is the cadence and delivering the play call and getting the play call and delivering it to the huddle, because he didn't have to do that in college. I mean, he wasn't required to be in command of X, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, X, Y, and Z. Like all of that goes into one call to make sure everybody's on the same page. He's now having to do. I can tell you that when he left from the mini camp phase to now the training camp phase, so what is that, roughly a month?
6 weeks.
There's palpable improvement. I mean, and everybody told me that, and everybody publicly denoted that, including head coach Matt Eberflus. When you mentioned like the RPOs and stuff, I watched him today. Just again, call it on air, right? We're not in pads, but just a simple play action, walk through kind of routine drill that they were doing. The way he contorts his body and is able to change on an angle, right? So he comes, like you're saying, to the left, Greg. He comes out to the left, he rolls out to the left, and he's able to just kind of sidearm that thing and get his body in a very controlled yet contorted position. And that is important stuff. Patrick Mahomes does that kind of stuff, right? And the best part about it all is his willingness to work, his fixation, as I've talked to his former coach Lincoln Riley about, on his things that he's not perfect at, or challenges for him, or things that didn't go right, mistakes that he's made. He is a grinder now. So it's like anything, right? You mentioned Federer. If you are that gifted athletically and you do the things necessary fundamentally to become and enhance those athletic traits and innate abilities and enhance them to become this total package, now you're talking like special stuff. And so I think that's what they fell in love with. And his personality has backed it all up here in Chicago.
Yeah, the over/under win total, projected in the desert is 8.5, which is the highest they've had since 2019, and it's mostly about him. It's also about the defense and how they finished out last year. And I know everyone's excited about the receivers around Caleb Williams, Keenan Allen. I was worried. I saw he wasn't practicing today, but then they said it was a veteran day. I was like, okay, great. Yeah. Roma Dunze is out there practicing. We know how good DJ Moore is. Tyler Scott's made some practice. So I'm not worried about that. I will get to my concerns in a bit, but I want to talk the defense, because that has been the identity of this team. I think they've built up that secondary. Like, to me, that's, if you want to see Matt Eberflus, Ryan Poles, their stamp on the team, it's that defense where they give Jalen Johnson all that money. Tyreek Stevenson's been good. Jaquan Brisker, Kyler Gordon. That's their identity. They have to be special. I thought Jalen Johnson was interesting this week, saying he's kind of sick of hearing about the potential of this team, and now it's action time. And I do wonder what you think about that, because like there is a lot of expectation on this team to be good right away, but it is a rookie quarterback. And I do think there are some issues with this team that maybe aren't the case with Green Bay and in Detroit in the same division. So how do you think they're going to balance that, all this attention, Hard Knocks, higher expectations, with the reality that it is a rookie quarterback? And I don't see them as some playoff type of favorite. I mean, I don't. And so Can they handle that? No.
Well, if I want to, before I answer that, I want to go back to what you said. You think that maybe Detroit and Green Bay maybe have the upper edge. I'm curious to know why.
Line play. That would be where I start, on both sides of the ball. I think I always look, when you're looking for surprise teams, good or bad, who has the best combined offensive line, defensive line. And I think that's probably where Chicago's the weakest on both sides of the ball. And so that really worries me. I think you pop under the hood and some of the numbers, like FDN Almanac, which is done by Aaron Schatz, used to be Football Outsiders. Like their mean protection for the Bears was 6.5. And partly, I think, because of that line play, partly because the defense improved so much down the stretch. They were 30th in the first half of the year, 6th in the second. You can say, they brought in Montez Sweat, but a lot of that is interceptions. Can you keep the defense at that high a level? And I just think Green Bay and Detroit are more talented, and they're better up front, and they've done it before. And they have proven coaches too. Like, everyone wants to all focus on how last year ended for Eberflus, but I think that the year and a half before matters too. And so I think 8.5 is a perfectly fine over-under. That sounds about right, that they're about 8 or 9 wins, but that's not making it to the playoffs. Like, that's all I'm saying.
No, this is a fascinating conversation, because one would argue that if you look at Detroit and what they accomplished, right? They went to the NFC Championship game. I was there at that game. They lost to San Francisco, who went on to the Super Bowl. What happened to them in the second half? They couldn't stop Brock Purdy. They couldn't stop the 49ers offensively. The big question for them is this going to be the year, with all the talent they added defensively, including the youngsters to the back end of their defense, guys like Terrion Arnold and Ennis Rakestraw, that, they're going to improve what has been a struggling, defense through the air, I would say.
Fair.
Yeah. In this division, to me, you have to have a bulldozer of a defense and the ability to run the ball in cold weather. And you have to have a dynamic quarterback.
I think it's just a tough division. I don't think the Vikings are bad either. And when I look at the line for the Bears, I see 2 to 3 question marks on the offensive line, maybe. Okay. And not much pass rush outside of Sweat on the defensive line. They were 25th in pressure rate. Other than Sweat, I think they're starting to Marcus Walker. It just, they seem a little thinner up front. And so that worries me. The case for them is just Caleb Williams covers all that up, and the Eberflus, glow up, how he's looking very handsome, and the defense is playing better, that it's for real, and that it carries over, kind of like the Lions did a year ago, and that I'm wrong. It's not gonna fall back at all.
Yeah, and this is why it's great to be underdogs in the NFL. I think a lot of teams you talk to, Greg, would be like, yeah, we're the underdogs, we're coming after you, whatever. This Bears team is going to be different. I think they're on both sides of the trenches are going to be different. Right now, they have a battle at center. That's one of the most intriguing storylines when it comes to Ryan Bates and Coleman Shelton. They are battling it out. They're trying to figure out which one of those two is going to be snapping the football to Caleb Williams. And so that's going to be critical. We heard from Darnell Wright, who was a rookie last season. He's going to be so different. Every player is, but especially, I would say, linemen coming into their second year. And as I say that, Gervon Dexter is going to be a name that you need to remember. He is going to have a breakout campaign. He's going to be unleashed. He's going to be unleashed up front. They know they need more push besides Montez Sweat. They do that.
Now, he was solid. He's a second-round pick, a defensive tackle who did some good things as a rookie. And so that is a good counterpoint that he could have a breakout year as a second-year defensive tackle. Yeah,
and Eric Washington, by the way, comes most recently from Buffalo. We know how good that pressure was in Buffalo, right? And has been with Sean McDermott. And Eric Washington was a big part of that. So he's the new defensive coordinator. We presume Flus will call the defense during the regular season. Eric's been kind of handling that here through the offseason. So it's been a nice relationship that they've really spawned together. They have 9 returning starters. Okay. You mentioned what they were good at last year, right? They got interceptions, they got takeaways. They were top 5 in both. And they were the best run defense in football, the number 1 run defense in football. I asked Eric Washington, the defense coordinator, literally today, what do you envision this pass rush looking like? They like their depth. I think there's some names on their roster, Greg, that are going to emerge. I just mentioned Jourdan Dexter coming into his second season that are going to surprise people. No different than, for instance, like an Aleem McNeil in Detroit, who's one of my favorite players in the league. And he's, one of the best at his position up front. They're going to rush with 4, and they want to rush with 4 consistently. What's that going to do? When you're able to just rush with 4, as you know, you have numbers on the back end. And with the type of secondary, as he said to me, we want to be able to rush with 4 and take advantage of just this unbelievable secondary that they have. And that group is a monster group. Their swagger, is off the charts. Brisker and Kevin Byard's new in the mix, and Kyler Gordon. You mentioned Tyreek Stevenson. That group, Jalen Johnson is one of now the top lockdown corners. The Bears paid him for a reason. How much will he get targeted this year? How will Jaquan Brisker?
It can't be less. I have a stat for you. They face the lowest percentage of passes to a number 1 receiver. That says it all about him. Of any team in the league, that's how good he was a year ago.
Yeah, and his technique has become so good. I think defensive backs don't get the credit they deserve when you consider technique and what they have to do to defend every single week, every Sunday. You got Devontae Adams. Now you got Justin Jefferson. You have, just name one, the best receivers in the game today. You got Steph Diggs. It's a task. And so I just think that guys like him going to another level with 9 returning starters and a couple of emerging players, I think this defense is going to be nasty this year.
I love it. I love the optimism. It sounds like you think it'll be more than 8.5 wins. You think they have a chance. You also live in Chicago, and I've never met a fan or thought of a fan base that's more optimistic every time, despite evidence to the contrary. So I get it. They now have good evidence that they actually will be good. And so I feel it. And you've kind of convinced me, because the back 7 on defense is fierce and great continuity. It is as good as maybe any back 7. The linebackers are going to be year 2. There's a lot to like. And then you combine that with a quarterback. To me, I'm as excited about as anyone since Andrew Luck to come into the NFL. That's a great combo. So you're going over. I don't know. I'm thinking 8 and 9, but they are somehow better than that. You know what I mean? They're a better team than they were a year ago, but it takes a little more.
I'm quick to pump the brakes at this time of year and picking wins because
you're a reporter anyways. That's putting you in.
Well, no, when I think about just this division, I think about the receiving core and who's going to throw them the football in Minnesota. Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson. That is a dynamic duo right there, right? Mm-hmm. The offense Detroit had was one of the best in the league last year. What is Green Bay going to look like with Jeff Hafley, who, under Joe Barry, I love Joe Barry, but they're going to cut it loose under Hafley. And he is very defensive back friendly. I mean, he coached D-backs for a long time, a long part of his career, and wants to unleash those guys. And they're going to come after you up front, I think, a little bit differently. So it's a brutal division. not unlike how brutal the AFC North is.
I think they're the two best divisions. You could convince me either way, but I almost
I
might
would
lean
say
NFC
gruesome.
North.
I would say gruesome divisions. I think they're pound for pound. They're just so gruesome. You know what I mean? Like look at the AFC West, right? They just float the ball all over the place in that division with Mahomes and Herbert, and we'll see what happens in Denver. But like, I don't know.
I love it. I love it. Like, I love that Bears Packers, which is always a Sunday night game. It's like now, it's like when Stafford got to Detroit, I was so happy that the Thanksgiving games were just better for me. Because the Bears are always on, and I'm always getting sold a bill of goods. But now it's for real. This kid is for real. I can't wait. You are for real. Again, the only Olympian I know. So when Canada and the U.S. go against each other, I mean, in women's basketball, that's not much of a competition. I don't even know if Canada made the. I'm just saying right now, the USA hasn't lost. I'm just saying when was the last time? They literally have never lost in the Olympics. I'm saying who do you root for here?
They're pretty good.
Men's basketball, that could be frisky.
That's a good question. I'm going to plead the fifth on it because I just became a U.S. citizen. So, I mean,
it's pretty cool.
Been here for a long time.
Well, it's a treat to have you on, Stacey, and hope to do it again throughout the season. Oh, one of your dogs is leaving the frame. That means it's time for us to go. That is it for NFL Daily. Looking forward to Thursday's show. We're going to talk some fantasy with Pat Daugherty, and we'll also get you caught up on all the news of the day. Until then, for Nick Shook and Stacey Dales, we'll see you next time.